Hello everyone, this is Genius Yoshi, and today we're going to be playing another deck to challenge the metagame. And today's powerful deck is Turbo Aggro, the real aggro deck. Now, you must have seen plenty of aggro decks show up and say, oh, I can win by turn 5, I can turbo stitch into play, I can do a lot of crazy fast stuff. And that's true, there's a bunch of different lists that do it. But the question is, how do you build an optimized aggro deck? What are the cards to avoid? What are the cards that you really need? Let's begin with the basics and build the deck together. So we will be playing Amber Amethyst because we have access to Lilo, a 2-questing 1-drop, and Maleficent, the other 2-questing 1-drop. And these are the only two 2-questing 1-drops in the game, which means that we can drop them fast. We can drop many of them if we have residual ones in our hand, and we can quest for a lot, hoping to win the game fast. So the idea of the deck is just to drop a bunch of small, hard questing characters and quest as fast as we can, as wide as we can. So even if our opponent starts removing our threats, we have enough threats to keep on pushing for the victory. And now that we have our 2 questers, the best combo, or one of the best combos early game, is to play a turn 2 Simba. And Simba is the only 2-drop that's a bodyguard. And he's a solid bodyguard. He has 3 toughness and 2 challenging power. So you can play Simba on turn 2, exerted, protecting your Lilo or your Maleficent, and your opponent is hard-pressed to defeat the Simba. There's very few 2-drops, if any, that can take down Simba and go after your weaker threats. Maybe there's Gaston, or there aren't that many. There are a few options that can do that, but their opponent needs a 1-drop and a 3-powered 2-drop to deal with this immediately. So it's hard to deal with, and it's probably ideal to let it go for a little while, but I digress. Today I'm the aggro player, not the control player. So play the 2 questers, play a Simba, and you're in business. Especially if you can follow it up with another Lilo and a few other characters. We'll also be playing Pascal. Since our goal is to go wide, we're going to be low to the ground, cheap characters. And Pascal has Evasive. Well, you have another character in play, which is almost always. So he's just a little evasive threat that allows you to sneak in these early points of quest and sneak in these final points of lore when you're in a pickle. And also, if you can get 2 Pascals, then they're 2 evasive threats because they're protecting each other due to that ability. Now, one thing that makes aggro decks stumble is if our opponent starts putting a couple of big creatures in play, it can be hard to get out of that situation. But a good aggro deck is going to have an out and a way to outplay this. And one of the best ways for a deck to outplay it is by playing Stitch Rockstar. Stitch Rockstar allows you to draw a card whenever you play a 2-costed or less character, which our deck is going to be filled with to the brim. So if we can land a Stitch Rockstar using the Shift 4 on top of a smaller Stitch, and then start flooding the board with our small characters, we get an influx of card that we can just keep on playing, which is very solid. So this will also be a Stitch Turbo deck. So to complement Big Stitch, we need Stitch New Dog, the small puppy, so that we can shift Stitch Rockstar on turn 4. In particular, we will want to intentionally stop our curve at 4. So we won't ink any card past the 4th card. Why is that? Because we want as many characters in the board as possible. And every card we ink is a character that's not getting in play. So even though we do not have card draw outside of Stitch Rockstar, even though we don't have a bunch of these ramp spells, we're not playing, we will not be playing Friends on the Other Side, our card advantage comes from the fact that we are not inking cards. And that is super important in this deck. Well, we're inking cards up to 4. We do need to have some ink to play stuff. One common mistake I see is people say, oh, I'm dropping a bunch of characters on the board, I should be playing Friends of the Other Side to refill my hand. No, you should not. Friends on the Other Side is meant for card advantage into longer games. If you're playing this on turn 3 or on turn 4, then it's time that you're missing to play your characters, time that they could be questing. And we're not going to be winning the late game. We're going to be questing hard and hopefully going over the line, either trampling over opponent with too many characters, too much lore, or get a huge lore differential, something like 16-2, and then just finish them off by dropping character after character, and our opponent can't answer them all before they quest. Alright, so where do we build from here? Well, we want as many 1-drops as possible, ideally ones with strong stats. We'll want Olaf as a 1-3. He can survive the onslaught of opponents' characters that have 2 power and quest an extra time, which is about as good as it gets for the remaining of the 1-drops. We'll play Archimedes as another 1-drop, thus allowing us to play a chunk of characters. LeFou is a character that quests for 2, so he'll get some inclusion in this deck. Minnie Mouse, because we're running out of 1-drops and 2-drops, and we do need some inkable characters. Now we also want to have a little bit more pushing power. So when we reach our 4 ink, our hand is going to be mostly empty by turn 4 or 5. So we want to have haymakers or powerful characters that we can drop at that point in time. And one of the best ones to drop in these colors is Zeus. Zeus is a 2-quester. Zeus is a 4-4 whenever you combat your opponent. So you can defend your weaker characters by playing Zeus, and then turn him into a 2-quester that's a threat immediately after. Now Zeus earns a spot in the deck. I will also be playing 4 copies of Hades for a similar reason. Hades allows us to get back one of the characters that has been destroyed. So it allows you to go wider and provides you a bit of card advantage while still applying some pressure on the board. It's the type of card that you play when you run out of other stuff to play to keep on having stuff to play. So as opposed to the Friends on the Other Side, which doesn't add anything to your board, Hades has a body that quests for 1, hopefully helping you to close the gap of the game, or recover a Stitch that was sent to the discard pile that you now need to win the game. But that's it. So 4 copies of Hades, 4 copies of Zeus, 4 copies of Stitch, and everything else should be 1 or 2 ink. So with that, we're at 42 ink. We're going to be playing Heihei because it's another character with, well, we're really running out of 1-drops at this point. And Heihei is actually the only one left looking into this. Or Timon. Yeah, well, pick your favorite. They're both awful. But we need 1-drops. So they will make the cut for this deck. And now we have 8 spots left to fill, which we will fill with 4 copies of Befuddle. Befuddle helps you to remove pesky threats early on. So if your opponent is playing a slow 2-drop and you're on the play and you go 1-drop and then Simba, and then the opponent plays like a beefy character on turn 2, you can Befuddle it and suddenly your characters live. And not only that, you can Befuddle and play 1-drop, 1-drop. Suddenly you have 4 characters against no characters. And yes, you've lost a card in the exchange, but you've gained some time, some tempo to score those points of lore that are going to help you to win the game. And now we need 1 last card to fill in our deck, and I will opt for Be Our Guest. Why Be Our Guest? Because Be Our Guest is going to allow me to find that Stitch Rockstar. It's going to allow me to find that Hades. It's going to allow me to find that 2-quester I need to finish the game, that Pascal I need for the evasiveness. And I can sing it with a 2-drop in a pinch. It's a card that is going to be inked most of the time. But late game, when I top deck a Be Our Guest, I'm happy to try and find the threat that I'm missing to close out the game. And so that's the deck list. A whole bunch of 1-drops, some 2-drops, including the all-important Simba Protective Cub, and then 4 copies of Hades, 4 copies of Zeus, and 4 copies of Stitch Rockstar. Now, the deck is playing 1, 2, 3, 4 non-inkable cards, which is a little bit of an hindrance trying to reach for that Stitch Rockstar, mostly because we tend to be stuck a little bit with the Hades and Zeus in our hand. So I've actually played the games first, so I'm cheating here. But I would probably cut maybe a Hades or a Zeus or 2 in favor of inkable threats for that ink value. But otherwise, the deck plays pretty smoothly. I will show you in games just how fast the deck is and how resilient it is. Not only is it important to win quickly, but it's important to make important game decisions based on board states. Not only for this turn, but for the next turn. If I can quest for a certain amount this turn, and the opponent can only take out so many characters, then I'm guaranteed to be able to quest for that much next turn. So it's important to take your time, calculate, and not always quest brainlessly with this deck. Lines of play are quite important, and the deck is pretty fun. You get to make decisions with cards on the board instead of cards in the hand. Different type of gameplay. Lots of fun, and I'll show it to you in action with some games coming right up. Alright, let's see what our opening hand looks like. We have a Lilo, we have Simba, and we have a Stitch. That's pretty perfect. The only thing that we're missing is a big Stitch. So we're going to mulligan the rest of our hand and see if we can find one. We don't, but we find a Lilo and a Maleficent. So we're off to a very fast start. So is our opponent playing a Lilo of their own. Since your opponent's playing an aggressive deck, we'll probably want to have the Minnie Mouse in play to try and challenge her. Let's actually open up with the Stitch. Normally like to keep it until turn 3 and then pop a bigger Stitch on top of it, but playing the early Stitch applies pressure on Lilo and forces the opponent to play Simba if they have one. They do, which is fine. Here we want to ink our Minnie Mouse, and we'll play double Lilo. Now the question is, do we quest with Stitch or not? I think we want to quest with Stitch. Gaining a bit of extra lore, stopping Simba from questing. We'll need to deal damage through that Simba to start tackling the Lilo anyways. So the reason why I'm going double Lilo here is because on the next turn I'm hoping to actually drop a Simba protecting them. So Lilo is just simple 1/1 quest for 2. And we're mimicking what our opponent is doing, but our opponent played first, so they have the initiative. And we're playing catch up. This is essentially a mirror match at this point. If we don't know do we know what the other ink our opponent's playing? I haven't been paying enough attention to what our opponent's been inking. Stitch turns, a Mega Stitch next turn would mean a lot of trouble for us. Fortunately, there's not much we can do. Our best hope is just to, okay, opponent finds a Lilo. Hope that we draw something we can ink, like that Mini. Play the Maleficent. Play the bodyguarded Simba. And then just try to race our opponent, because we have too many we have more characters that quest for 2. Simba, 2/3 bodyguard, needs to be attacked before any of our smaller creatures get attacked. So it's really a defensive maneuver here. If the opponent wants to take out our Simba, they'll have to, well, challenge it with Stitch. I must say, this is rough. But now, thankfully, our opponent is going to have a Stitch exerted. Simba trades. We need an inkable. We find an inkable card. And it's time to play Zeus. Zeus must take out Stitch. The fact that our opponent did exert that Stitch might have been a mistake, because I don't think we have a good way of actually dealing with Stitch. We're going to protect our Zeus here, even if it costs us the 2 quester, and we're going to quest. Because Zeus is going to get us back that 2 lore next turn anyways. Just didn't want to give it up for free to our opponent. Alright, a Befuddle. So what do we want to do here? The Hades is tempting. Do we have anything good to get back? We have a Simba. Simba's a good pickup. Let's go and pick back up our Simba. I don't think we quest here, because Stitch challenging Maleficent is troublesome, and Lilo challenging Zeus as well. So we're just going to pass the turn here, leaving our threat. And our biggest threat is Hades right now. It threatens trading with these 2 characters. Ooh, opponent's going to 5 ink and drops Mulan. Mulan's a threat. Mulan is a threat indeed. Alright. What do we want to do here? We could quest with everything. And then our opponent... Mulan challenges Simba. And the opponent has the nice Stitch to Maleficent, Lilo to Zeus type trade here. And we don't really have anything on the swing back. So we're just going to be playing our cards naturally. Trying to get more stuff on the board. Opponent is unlikely to be playing board wipes in this situation. And if we can find a big Stitch, then we'd be in a pretty good spot. We have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2, 4, 6, 7, 8. And our opponent can take down 5 next turn. So we can quest for 8. Then quest for another 4 next turn. That's 19. That's good enough. Well, we'll just bounce the Stitch. Then suddenly our opponent no longer has enough characters to deal with our board state. And I'll pass the turn back. Sitting at 15 lore, the opponent needs something pretty strong to take out our wide array of characters. So it's not just the speed of the deck, but we do get a lot of cards in play with this strategy because we're not putting a lot in the ink. By taking our time and questing at the appropriate moment, we've put our opponent in a very difficult situation here. There's a LeFou. Okay, readying Mulan is a pretty nice move. I appreciate that. So opponent... This can leave us with 4 of questing power. Plays a Stitch. It's still pretty hard because we can quest with everything. And suddenly the opponent must challenge our 3 exerted creature and must have a removal spell for Olaf. That's one of the things about Lorcana. Once an opponent gets close to that 20 mark, you must have removal after removal spells, which is almost impossible. So you want to avoid having these big lore differentials. Opponent finds the Maui, which isn't good enough. Opponent will be able to quest for quite a bit. But quite a bit is not quite enough. Oh, and we have Big Rockstar, which doesn't really help at this point. and we'll win. We're almost out of resources, but not quite. We had just enough to win the game. Let's see what we get. We have Simba, Maleficent, Lilo, and inkable cards. That is pretty much the ideal starting hand. Only problem is we're not going first. Then that's okay. It's unfair if the hard aggro goes first every time. We will ink our Be Our Guest and play Maleficent and pass the turn back to our opponent. Our 1/1 quests for 2. Opponent plays a Lantern, so some acceleration coming down from our opponent. Befuddle's probably going to be useless at this point because the opponent intends on playing at least a 3-drop. So I'll compensate by accelerating into a Lilo Maleficent. About as hard aggro as you can get. Lilo being essentially the same card as Maleficent, with slightly different flavor text. Also, I guess she's a Storyborn hero, as opposed to Maleficent being a Dreamborn sorceress villain. Opponent plays a Rapunzel. Rapunzel is an annoying card. We'll ink a mini. Man, did we draw well. We've drawn Simba, which we can play as a bodyguard, and we've drawn a Stitch, which we will be able to upgrade into Stitch Rockstar next turn. It doesn't get any better than this in terms of an aggressive line. So again, we have Simba protecting us, and our opponent just decides to resign because the Simba and the 2 questers is too much to handle. Let's see what we get this time. So we have a big Stitch, a Simba is pretty good. But I think we're going to mulligan most of the rest of the hand in hopes of finding either a Lilo, a 1-drop Stitch, or a Maleficent. Do we get it? We get a Stitch. Alright, so that's something. And we get to go first. I'm going to ink a Simba here. I don't think I want 2 of those. And I will play a Heihei. Just in case our opponent has a Fire to Cannon. I want to keep the 1-drop Stitch alive as long as I can in order to play Stitch Rockstar. Still want to have the 1-drop Simba line, because that's pretty good. Although if our opponent doesn't do anything, then the turn 2 LeFou is going to be pretty good. We're going to have 2 quester on the board. Opponent inks a red LeFou and passes the turn. Okay, Befuddle. I need ink at this point. So you go in the ink pile. Opponent has nothing, so we'll just drop the LeFou because it's additional pressure. Sure, support LeFou. Give him a little bit more useless stats for this turn. So opponent is playing Ruby purple and plays a Gaston, 4/2 Reckless. Alright. Maleficent's not inkable here. I think I have to sacrifice Stitch to play Simba and Maleficent. I'm going to ink Big Stitch and pivot the game plan here to go Maleficent Simba in bodyguard mode, and just quest for 4. Opponent inks some big Maleficent, unlikely to see any playtime. Oh, and a Rafiki comes in. That hurts us quite a bit. That is troublesome. Now I need to ink our Small Stitch. We will challenge Rafiki, because Rafiki can quest. Let's play our Hades here. And get back our Simba. And we'll just quest with Maleficent. This will mostly force Gaston to go and trade with Maleficent. Not great for us. Looking back on the deck list, because the 1-drops Maleficent and Lilo are not inkable, maybe I'm playing a little bit too many uninkables in order to play the big Stitch line. Opponent plays a Rafiki. Opponent really likes Rush. Alright. You could rush a Zeus, take out Rafiki. Let's score 1 point of lore with Hades. I think that's what we have to do. And I'll quest with Hades, pass the turn back. Opponent plays a Magic Mirror, hoping to get us back with card advantage, which honestly is likely to work at this point. Now we have 4 ink, we have 4 cards. I would rather you take down my Hades than my Simba at this point, so I'll just go wide. Opponent is only on 4 ink. So either opponent has a ton of uninkable cards in hand, or opponent is just biding their time. I'm not exactly sure. Friends on the other side, drawing 2. Probably lack of inkable cards. At this point, I regret not going after the big Stitch line. Opponent plays a second Gaston. To go with the first Gaston, we find a Zeus. We will play it. Ink. Quest. 1 point at a time. 11-0. Gaston's not looking great against Simba, but last times we've seen a Rafiki just take it down and then Gaston got a free shot. And our opponent has gotten quite a bit of those, which is a pretty bad sign. But we're still holding on. Our opponent doesn't have that much ink or cards. Dragon Fire. Yeah, our opponent's 2 for 1-ing us into oblivion. Inking a Pocket Watch. We get a second Zeus. Olaf will take Gaston and we'll take the 2 lore. And I hope that our opponent doesn't have too many more big rushers or dragon fires. Opponent's still far from playing Maleficent, except inking it. Our opponent recognizes that. Okay, there's a big Dr. Facilier coming down. So we have our Zeus, our 0-4 Rush Challengers. Hades is a big draw here, because Hades gives us multiple cards. Probably want to get another Zeus. Just because it's a 2-quester and has the highest toughness or willpower. Dragon Fire takes out a Zeus. Facilier takes out a Zeus. Turn passes back to us. We'll play another one. Zeus galore. Might as well quest with Hades. I'm not sure if there is a big advantage with questing or not questing with Hades here. Because we can just hold it back and try to finish off our opponent. Okay, there was. Because the opponent had to be prepared. Wiping the board. But now we're sitting with a pair of 1-drops, ready to quest for game yet again. One of which is Evasive in Pascal. Opponent has another Be Prepared. We have another Stitch. Just don't want to let our opponent use the magic mirror too much. A Jafar into the ink pool. Elsa. Okay, Elsa is a problem. We'll play Be Our Guest. We'll hard cast it and find a Pascal is what we want. Play Pascal. Quest for 1 and pass the turn. Oh, okay, that's nice. A big Elsa is going to freeze both our characters. The small Elsa can take out one of them. I'll play another Be Your Guest. I want to draw the Hades here. I think. Because if I put the pressure... You know what? We are running into trouble. Oops. I ran out of time on that one. Which apparently means that I don't get a card. Alright. Well, that'll make us lose the game. If one draws a card with Magic Mirror, we draw LeFou, we pass the turn back. One quests to 8. Magic Mirror number 2. We draw a Be Our Guest yet again. We'll draw the Maleficent. Opponent can quest for 1, 4, 5, 6. Alright, so we have to do something. We can't run out both our threats. Yeah, so Elsa's gonna exert LeFou. She'll go down. So the trick here is if we had a bit more time, we just want to wait until we have sufficient threats in hand to just play them all at once, so Elsa can't take them down one at a time. Now it's 2 at a time. So we are out of luck. We'll play both cards, pass the turn. Opponent can quest 4, 5, 6, 7. But our opponent can wipe our board. And Elsa is actually a good way to make sure that we can't quest. And Elsa with Rush does make a lot of sense. If we had gotten the extra card from Be Our Guest earlier on, we might have been able to squeeze through the victory. But at this point, hope is all but lost. As we find another Zeus, we'll take out one of the Elsas. Maybe that would have been a good play. Just pick up the Zeus with the Hades. And our opponent quests us into oblivion as we lose this game. I hope that you've enjoyed this Turbo Aggro deck and gameplay video. give the deck list a try. It's super annoying for the opponents, except if they're playing Grab Your Sword, in which case they'll blow up your board. But outside of that, super fun deck to play. I hope that you'll enjoy it. I hope that you've enjoyed the gameplay videos and all of the depth that has gone into some of the matchups and some of the combat decisions. If you did enjoy it, please subscribe to the channel, give it a like, tell me in the comments how much you liked it or what you would have changed in the deck or in the decisions. I do appreciate your feedback. I do appreciate the comments. They're what making this video is all about. And please subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.